Hey, what's up YouTube? This is Dan the Fix-It Man. Got another quick video here for you. I'm going to show you how to change your rear brake pads on a 2004 Chevy Silverado. This is a 1500 work truck. Now I know some versions of this truck have different setups in the back. This is just the disc drum combo, and this is just a small single piston caliper that we're working with. So, you know, at the auto parts store they may ask you what type you have, just as a heads up. But the first thing we're going to do is pull off the caliper. There's these two bolts here, and a 13 millimeter socket fits on that. It also half-inch would work. And then you'll notice that there's the slide pin that it goes in might spin as you're loosening this. Now that one did not, but if it does, you can just put an open-end wrench on there. There we go. So we can just set those bolts aside. There's the other one. And then we can pull the caliper off and just kind of prop it up here over on the leaf spring, somewhere out of the way where it's not going to fall. Now we can pull out our brake pads. Now you can see they're worn down. It's actually started scraping on here. Looks like this one might have started grinding as well. Looks like this was just starting to wear down metal to metal. The other side had gone really bad, metal to metal, so we went ahead and picked up some new rotors, or rotor drum combo, and I've already replaced the other side, so we're going to replace this one as well. Now if you were just replacing pads, you don't have to do this next part, but since we are replacing the disc drum, you're going to need an 18 millimeter socket or wrench. And there's two large bolts back here that hold this caliper bracket in place. And that's what those look like, and you can see they've still got some of that yellow thread lock on the bolt. We will be reusing those. And just hang on to the caliper bracket while you loosen the bottom one, because that will just come right off. Now we can pull off the old drum disc. You'll have a really hard time getting this off if you don't take off the parking brake. And sometimes those do stick, but if you hit them with a hammer, sometimes that'll break it loose. And this is our parking brake shoe here. You can see that the lining on there is still okay. We're not going to replace that, but I'm going to spray it down with a little bit of brake cleaner. Really not so much here, but just kind of around here, just to eliminate some of the dust in there. You don't want to saturate the brake pad material with too much brake cleaner. It'll start to make it come apart or become separated from the metal there, but just enough to kind of clean it up and have a good surface for the new rotor. I just wanted to show you this adjustment here as well. If your parking brake is loose, you can come in here and just turn this little star wheel, and that will actually adjust this farther out. Let me see if I can turn it with one hand. It's kind of stiff here. So on this side you actually pry it up, and that's this pulls that star wheel up into place, and you see I've opened up this gap right here, and that's I've put the drum on a few times just to check it, and it feels nice and snug right now. So that's where we're going to leave it. And again, as you can see, there's enough lining on here to not worry about replacing that right now. Now before you put the new rotor / drum on, just clean it off. You know, when they package it at the parts store or at the manufacturer, they coat it with a little bit of that oil. So I've wiped that out on the inside already, and just kind of slide that back on. That one's nice and snug. Just make sure it'll still turn, but I can feel those pads or the shoe lining on there It's just enough to hold it really well and, for parking, but that's not really going to drag. If it does, it'll wear down just a little bit. That's okay. Now the next thing we need to do is put this caliper bracket back on and hang it there with those 2 bolts. But before we do that, we are going to change out this hardware here, which is just pull on it, just pops off. Same with this. It's almost easier to do when it's already mounted, but I'll show you how we'll put the new hardware on there in a minute. But also I want to clean these slide pins, so just pull them straight out, just top and bottom, just pull on them, and then we'll get those wiped down really well. Sometimes you need to use a little bit of brake clean on them, but these ones are just kind of gunked up a little bit. Just get them nice and clean, and then before we put them back in, I'm going to put a couple dabs of this Sil Glide on there. That works really well as a brake lube. Just kind of spread that grease around on each of these. Try not to get any grease on the rotor or the braking surfaces. And then here you can just slide those slide pins back in. You see the boot kind of bulges out. It's because there's a little bit of air in there. So you almost need to squeeze that boot and burp them a little bit, or let some of that air out as you push it in. Same with the other one here. You can kind of hear it moving in there, and then there's some air in there that'll kind of pop out. But let's go ahead and mount this first, and then I'll put those other brackets in place, or the pad retainer clips. Some people call them a shim. A little bit easier just to hang this in place first. At least it's easier to show you. We'll go ahead and tighten that too. Just double check your manual on the torque spec on this caliper bracket bolt. So we can just continue to turn that until this caliper piston is pressed almost all the way back in. Hopefully you're able to see this. I just don't know if this is the best angle for the camera here. You can see that dust boot is kind of folding up on itself. That's what it's supposed to do. And sometimes that little bit of grease helps that happen without it bulging out. You don't really want to go too fast because you can bind that up, but as long as it moves smoothly, that's the main thing. There we are. That's pushed in far enough. Now we can position this over the pads. What you're going to have to do is pull on the slide pins just a little bit. This one feels like it still might have a little bit of air in there, but just kind of line that up. I'm going to pull on the upper slide pin at the same time, and then you should be able to get that over the pads just like that. Now because it's got that little spring up here in the top, it's wanting to push out, so you kind of have to hold it down in place while you get those bolts started. Same with this one right here. Just go ahead and get them started. You might have to push in a little bit on that caliper. Now on the other side, when tightening this, the slide pin, because it had some nice fresh grease, was just spinning, and that's what's happening here as well. So I just had to grab an 18mm open end wrench and put that on the slide pin itself, so we can tighten this up. Again, if I get a chance to look up that torque spec, I'll put it here in the video or somewhere in the description. But I just recommend you look that up on your manual if you get a minute. Same with the bottom one here. It's the slide pin just wants to spin, so I'm having to throw this open end wrench on there. And you're done. I'm just giving it one more quick spray of the brake cleaner to eliminate some of my handprints off that surface of the rotor. Don't forget to tighten everything per spec, and go ahead and step on the brake pedal once or twice, which will push this caliper piston back out, and that will seat these brake pads up against the rotor where they need to be. Also, go ahead and top off your master cylinder. Make sure that your brake fluid is at the appropriate level. Get everything tightened up, and you should be good to go. I hope you liked the video. Please give it a thumbs up and subscribe if you don't mind. That does help me out. I will put a link in the description to that Sil Glide brake lube and a few other things as well on my website. But thanks so much for watching, and good luck.